Yeah, she was just going to call Catherine, which, okay, there's Catherine right there.
Yeah.
And then Maggie and Alexis are having her. Sorry. Oh, those eight? Okay.
No, that's fine.
Oh, well.
Hang on. Great. Okay.
Not it seems you're careless.
Gotta be fancy.
I think.
Okay, sorry about that. Oh, no, it's okay. I was just like, you're trying to. I know. I just, I'm sure it's fine. Yes, they said they're running. They're booking it over here. Yeah, they couldn't find parking. Yeah.
We did too, we were right down the street.
Okay, I'm gonna ask.
Interested in this one in the doctor's? I'm always highly skeptical.
Tells people to go there from this.
Well, Matt talks about it and like, you know, all this is wrong.
I'm gonna fact check all their books.
Oh, God.
But if
Ray.
I feel like
This is Jen.
Bye.
This is Ray.
that's
Nice to meet you.
That'll give them a little time to.
yeah,
And then
sounds
Catherine.
good.
This is Catherine. I know you kind of like saw each other in the car.
All right,
Nice.
we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Nice to meet you.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. If you did not know where you are, this is Left Bank Books presents Rafael Frumkin to celebrate the launch of Confidence. The book is finally out in the world. Tonight's event is possible because of your support. When you support Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into the local economy. It helps keep our bookstore open, and it also helps keep your streets paved, your libraries funded, your parks free, and so many other things, making St. Louis a better place. I would like to thank you all for being here, for shopping local, and for supporting this event. For the virtual audience, hello. Thank you all so much for your patience. You can interact with tonight's event by typing in questions as a comment. We will have audience Q&A towards the end of the event. And if you would like to ask a comment or if you would like to comment or ask a question, you will need to be logged into YouTube to do so. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books and the very excited conversation partner for this evening. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis, including the incredible Evan over there in the back of the room, and Alex, who is over there somewhere, and the rest of our team here at Left Bank Books. We have some amazing events lined up for March and April. We will still be producing virtual events, and we'll continue bringing our in-person events into the virtual world for those of you watching from home. So be sure to check out our event calendar on our website, left-bank.com, for a full list of all of our programming for readers of all ages. For a couple of upcoming events that I would recommend, Rebecca Mackay and I will be in conversation on March 23rd. If you like Confidence, I think you will absolutely like Rebecca Mackay's new book. It is also a mystery-esque type book. And that's going to be at the Ethical Society, and Liam Callanan at the end of the month is another professor and also writing incredible literary fiction. His new book, When in Rome, I'm almost done with it, and it is also very wild. The main character is trying to become a nun, but that's just a small part of the book. And now, about tonight's book. Best friends and occasional lovers, Ezra and Orson are teetering on top of the world after founding a company that promises instant enlightenment in this thrilling caper about scams, schemes, and the absurdity of the American dream. At 17, Ezra Green doesn't have a lot going for him. He's shorter than average, snaggle-toothed, internet addicted, and halfway to being legally blind. He's also on his way to Last Chance Camp, the final stop before juvie. But Ezra's summer at Last Chance turns life-changing when he meets Orson, brilliant and Adonis-like with a mind for hustling. Together, the two embark upon what promises to be a fruitful career of scam artistry. But when they try to pull off their biggest scam yet, New Life, a corporation that promises its consumers a lifetime of bliss, things start to spin wildly out of control. Searing and charming with the suspense of The Talented Mr. Ripley, the decadence of The Great Gatsby, and the wit of Succession, Confidence is a story for anyone who knows that the American dream is just another pyramid scheme. Julia Fine, the author of The Upstairs House, says confidence is a fabulous send-up of the American dream, and our insistence it's still within reach despite all evidence to the contrary. A joyful ride to the top, propelled by the knowledge of our hero's impending fall. Half the fun is waiting for the other shoe to drop. The rest is in Rafael Frumkin's wit, clever narration, and undeniable pathos. And I agree. I have many, many other words that I will be telling you about why I agree. But let's just say I loved this book. You are in for a treat. Rafael Frumkin is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and the Medill School of Journalism. His first novel, The Come Down, was published by Henry Holt in 2018 to critical acclaim. His collection, Bugsy and Other Stories, is forthcoming. He lives with his partner, 2 cats, and 1 dog in Carbondale, Illinois, where he is an assistant professor of creative writing at Southern Illinois University. And now, if you would all please help me in warmly welcoming Rafael Frumkin. All right, do we want to get started with the reading?
For sure, yeah. So I just head up here?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. It really warms my heart and feeds my soul. It feels so beautiful. I'm seeing so many SIU people, and it just makes me so happy. As maybe you know, maybe you don't, these readings, it can be hard. Hi. Oh my God, I know it. It can be hard to like get people to come to a reading in like an independent bookstore. So I've given readings to, not given them, I've arrived and no one's been there. So I just sort of stood hangdog while people folded up chairs, It was awful, but I'm so happy to see you all here and know that I've got an audience. And I really appreciate that. I've got friends in this world. All right, so I am going to read from the very first part of this book. It's not a spoiler, it doesn't spoil the ending necessarily, but it gives you a sense of where they end up, not why, though. All right. In prison, small things matter. A pencil, a banana, a packet of ramen. People studying for their GEDs got pencils. Bananas were a rare commodity, meaning you had to be rich or smart if you were mashing one into your oatmeal. And ramen was so warm and filling, gave the eater such a sense of reassurance that people would trade cigarettes for it, or pay you to take their GED exams in exchange for 5 or 6 packets. You had to purchase the ramen from the commissary, and then it would be released to you in the chow hall at the end of the meal. The inmates working in the kitchen would heat it up and give it to you in a little bowl with a plastic spoon, and you'd be allowed to take it back to your cell, or if you were lucky, the TV room, to eat. Plastic spoons could be snapped in half and given rigid edges, so you had to be proven well-behaved to get one to use outside of the chow hall. My cellmate once made a gash in someone's forearm with the end of a plastic fork. He wasn't allowed any utensils. Instead, he ate his food with his hands, which worked because most of the food was congealed into cakey spheres that were easy to pick up and eat in a matter of bites. Unlike him, I had connections. I was eating macaroni and cheese when everyone else was eating meatloaf, brownies when everyone else was eating Jell-O. Everyone was surprised by how well I fared in prison. It was kind of a joke. The little pretty kid is actually the meanest motherfucker in here. But really, I wasn't mean, nor was I particularly pretty. I was just focused on doing what I did best. I'd converted another inmate, Tyrell, to the magic of new life, and together we become business partners, synthesizing members of the general population in exchange for Lucy's ramen, drugs, shower privileges, protection, and sex. We held weekly informational meetings in the library that we pretended were AA meetings, bribing the CEOs with low-quality Molly and Oxy to get high on the stacks and ignore us. We'd rearrange the demeaning 12-step circle into rows, and Tyrell and I would stand at the front, his lanky form towering over mine. Our first meeting was on a Wednesday night directly after chow, in those restless few hours when people tried to get drunk or pick fights before we had to return to our bunks. What's new life? Duke, who'd lost an eye in a botched bank robbery, wanted to know. New life is a way of turning matter into potential, I said. Tyrell gestured to the four walls enclosing us. Take this library, he said. The windows are barred. It's only books in the stacks that's supposed to be safe for convicts to read. You know what I mean by safe? Blank stares. Unlikely to provoke restlessness, awareness of our condition, I chimed in. Stifling independent thought, prohibitive to freedom. But with the power of new life, you can be free anywhere, Tyrell said, nodding to me. You wake up every morning doubting yourselves and doubt yourselves until you go to sleep. I began walking up and down the aisles, watching the inmates' heads swivel to accommodate my movement. You spend an inordinate amount of time living under the suspicion that you are frauds, undignified, unworthy of the special attentions and affections of others. On the outside, you labor in your jobs, assuming that if you make more money, you'll be happier. And then, of course, you're not happier. You deny yourselves bliss. You deny yourself simple but beautiful, uncritical living. You hunger after betterness, and that hunger, even the betterness itself, makes for unhappiness. This is when Tyrell played dumb. He let out a little laugh and pulled at the collar of his uniform. So how are you planning to solve the problem of betterness? All eyes on me again. Some bald heads gleaming with the ceiling's fluorescence, some tattooed arms folded. It was incredible to have an audience like this, phoneless and understimulated, more rapt than any audience I could have had on the outside. This was my milieu. Synthesis, I said. A raised hand, this one from Al, who'd blown up a bar in which members of a rival gang were celebrating someone's birthday. When I called on him, he slouched forward, forehead wrinkled thoughtfully, hands squeezed between his knees. I was wondering, maybe I missed this, but what's synthesis? You didn't miss anything, Al, I said, and resumed my pacing. It's difficult to explain exactly what synthesis is. I won't even attempt to do it now. Suffice it to say that it rebuilds your memories and leaves you in a state of complete and uninhibited bliss. It gathers the shards of your self-worth up off the ground. My self-worth? See, you have to stop thinking on a big macro scale, I blazed ahead. We all have traumas, right? But what are the specific moments that those traumas become most salient in our lives? You hate your dad? Okay, great. But what was the one thing he did that made you hate him most? You're scared of heights? Makes sense. So am I. Synthesis takes you back to the moment when you got stuck on the top of the Ferris wheel, or when you were peering over the cliff's edge, or when you couldn't climb down from that tree. It asks you to take the sovereignty over those moments. It asks you to take sovereignty over those moments. Sovereignty, Tyrell repeated slowly, like a school teacher. Basically, like ownership. You could say I'm the first beneficiary of synthesis, I said. I've undergone it myself, and by now I've watched countless people undergo it. And believe me, it's life-changing. I didn't tell them about Orson, the little crack in his morning voice, his eyes meeting mine as we woke up, his smile anticipating my own, his hair matted from sleep. I didn't tell them about the farm, about the hundreds of people sitting cross-legged awaiting his appearance, listening with rapt devotion when he finally took the stage. And I certainly didn't tell them about Orson being led away from me in handcuffs, shouting over his shoulder, just hang on, Ez, we'll be fine. How could I tell them about any of that? They wouldn't have understood. After synthesis, you're left with the memory of none of the pain, I said. You're left with the opposite of pain, actually. Your self-doubt goes into remission, Tyrell said, clearly aware that he was introducing a new vocabulary term. That means it stops being active. You get free that way. And then you keep up the cycle. You get better by giving back. That means you gotta bring more people to New Life. You gotta get them to join up. The bigger the New Life family, the more freedom to go around. Duke looked skeptical. How'd you get in here again? The question was clearly directed at me, but I acted confused anyway. Me? He nodded. I knocked over a 7-Eleven, I said. I accidentally shot the clerk. You shot the clerk. This came from someone called D-Red, who had spent 2 months in solitary for nearly killing a CEO with a lock in a sock. Yeah, man, Tyrell said, stepping forward as though he were my counsel approaching the bench. It's true. You don't look like you could even handle a gun, D-Red said. Nah, he can handle a gun, Tyrell insisted. This isn't about me, I said quickly. This is about New Life and the radical power of synthesis. This is about taking you all from the unsynthesized to the synthesized and helping you reclaim your bliss. Is this like finding God? Al wanted to know. It's a little like that, yeah, Tyrell said, but better. Who wants to try it? I asked. It's painless, and Tyrell here is one of the most gifted synthesizers I've ever met. A few raised hands. I waited long enough to elicit a few more. Great, I said. We'll just collect whatever you got. I walked up and down the aisles until they palmed me their contraband, some of which I tucked into the waistband of my uniform, some of which I swallowed on the spot. Then I nodded to Tyrell, who arranged 2 of the folding chairs across from each other and invited one of the willing to sit in the chair opposite him. I took a seat in the back row as he synthesized them, watching their trembling smiles and tears, applauding as each sprang from his seat to announce he'd been changed forever. Tyrell could elicit this kind of reaction without fail. He was better at it than me, even. But Orson had to be the best at it. The way he'd lean forward and lace his fingers together, smile on the synthesized smile, and sigh with the synthesized side. He'd put a finger to his lips in thought and then say something spellbinding, something that could echo in your ears for hours or even days afterwards. There was nothing like it. There was no one like him. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So since we did start in prison, I want to know why you structured the book in this way. So like, so much of the book feels like edge of your, I should admit, I took the book to a bar where there were sports playing and everything was like really loud and still was just like wrapped in the book. Like I am not one of those people that can read in public, but I'm like, I don't want to put this down. I don't want to be watching sports. I want to be in this book. So like the structure and the like pacing of the book, I'm curious how you like what decisions you made to make it that way.
Yeah. Oh, is this
Yes,
on?
you're good.
It is on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think honestly, I wanted to have that kind of record scratch moment, you know, like, whoa, how did we get here, right? We opened in prison. We've got this little kind of nebbish, this small man who doesn't look like he's done anything, you know, aggressive or violent, right? And he's committed this white collar crime, and he's just kind of here. We don't know how he got here, and then he's pulling this kind of hustle in prison, right? So then I wanted people to see that and kind of take that in and be like, oh, what's going on? What is New Life? What is synthesis? And then give them the story of that. So people are asking questions right away. And that's kind of how that like teaser in the beginning works. But the structure of the book is just very simple. It's just like getting from point A to point B very clearly and very straightforwardly. My first book was duct taped together at the seams plot-wise. It just didn't work plot-wise, but this is just plot. So yeah, the structure felt simple in that way, I think.
But it is very character heavy as well. So
Yes.
it's really appealing to both. Well, I mean both. Like there are more than 2 kinds of readers. But like the plot heavy mystery readers, the character heavy mystery readers, it appeals to both like so much. So where did the inspiration for Ez and for Orson kind of stem from?
Yeah, this is such a good question. I was not sheltering in place alone. I was sheltering in place with a good friend of mine. And we watched the NXIVM documentary, The Vow. People have seen that. And I was fascinated by Keith Raniere, who is, have you seen The Vow?
I have not.
So basically, Keith Raniere is this man who invented something called executive success programs, and which are essentially, right, like these classes one takes in order to self-actualize and grow as a person. And you have to, keep on taking classes and get other people to take the classes with you. It's a Ponzi scheme, And through this, he developed what ended up being a sex cult, which is not in the book, thankfully. But he's a repugnant person. He's an awful personality. He's absolutely disgusting. And that's not how I think of Orson. But I got kind of the inspiration for Orson from this Ponzi scheme cult kind of situation. So Raniere was at the center of that, was definitely someone I drew influence from, but not in terms of his like utter repugnance. Orson has that Dickie Greenleaf charisma. That's another influence, is the talented Mr. Ripley. He just has everything going for him. He's doing great. He's the object of everyone's desire, just sort of like platonic and non-platonic. So those were maybe two inspirations for Orson. And then for Ez, I had kind of a Nick Carraway feeling from The Great Gatsby, kind of someone who's an observer, but it's also very calculating and careful. And he's a very small man, which I don't know what the inspiration for that was. Maybe the tin drum or something. I don't know. But like he's kind of small in stature, but like mighty in mind.
Has anyone described the book as like legitimately sexy yet? Like
As him?
No, just like the
Orson?
whole book. Like I was like, this is the oddest gay romance I've ever read, and I love it.
That's funny. My editor wanted me to put more sex in.
I think it had the right amount.
I think it had one paragraph of sex, and that felt, it's pretty chaste.
But that one paragraph.
That one paragraph is steamy.
There's so many layers to the book and so many things going on. Did you have like a dare of like, can you fit this into the book? But seriously, the glaucoma and the kind of going blind is such an interesting layer to the book, because so much of the book in the new life is about seeing and being open to the world. So I want to know if like what made you contrast those?
Yeah, I think so. I actually originally, like, I've had some reviewers say so far, like, the blindness is really on the nose for like, Ezra's like moral blindness, the fact that he's like really going blind. And I don't mind that, honestly. I really wanted it to be like Sophoclean. I wanted it to feel like a Greek tragedy almost. And you think of like Oedipus Rex, like pulls his eyes out when he finds the truth about what he's done, right? And so Ezra, as he's sort of progressively understanding the truth of what he's doing, his eyesight is deteriorating. And so that's that layer, like you're saying, it also contrasts with new life and the vision for the future and the whole like startup kind of like that futurism, that predicting or being able to see ahead, understand what's not there yet. And Ezra, while he's capable of doing that in terms of his business acumen, he can't do that, realistically. He can't see where he's headed. And so that's kind of where that came in for me. I thought of it like a 3-act tragedy. That's also a dark comedy. Like, there's just like stuff is happening in there. But that's kind of what I was trying to accomplish with that, giving it that sort of tragicomic kind of vibe.
I did not think it was heavy-handed. I thought it was like it just fit his character and it fit everything about him, and to be so like stubborn about it, like yeah, I thought it was a great addition.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, you add in so much. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but like there's a South American coup, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
things I did not expect when I started reading this book. And actually, I wanted to ask you about that because I wanted, like, do you have a background in linguistics or like the language that like you kind of created and the country and the whole story of like that little tangent?
Irmao.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really interesting and really, I thought it was very well done.
Thank you.
So other characters, we have Elaine. Who
Yes.
I loved Elaine.
Yes, I do too.
God, she's so like unsuspecting and then she's not. And you have Brianna and Emily. Is it Emily?
Yes.
Who is Emily based on?
Emily is based on very specifically on like Amanda Seyfried. Like I think she looks exactly like her. And which is funny because she was Elizabeth Holmes in The Dropout.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I imagined her as this sort of like very easygoing, gorgeous, you know, she's like Orson's perfect match almost. And she's torturing Ezra because Ezra, she's like, oh my God, Orson's amazing, isn't he, Ezra? He's such a good kisser too. And Ezra's like, I wouldn't know, you know. And it's just, I think it's sort of sad how it's not sad for them. Like I'm happy for Orson and Emily that things come easily to them. I don't want people to suffer, you know. But like it's sad how difficult it is for Ezra to get the things he wants, you know, and how easy it is for them to get what they want. You know, that contrast feels kind of sad to me. So I wanted a character who would really exaggerate that contrast, and Emily is for certain that character. So.
I think there are very obvious reasons why switching to Orson's point of view wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, when you were writing it, if you ever thought about making chapters from his point of view and how possibly just big-headed those chapters would be.
You know, and that's a wonderful observation because I feel like I agree. I feel like it wouldn't necessarily be the most readable of fiction, but it would certainly be fun to write. It's like a fun character to inhabit. And I hadn't thought of doing that, but it would be fun as just kind of like an exercise. I have my students do this weird shit like this all the time where I'm like, you know, we just actually made a digital footprint for our characters. We were like, you know, go online and like generate a social media profile, generate a dating profile for your character. And so it'd be so funny to generate a dating profile for Orson, you know, and like kind of figure out his character that way. So yeah, maybe it's something I could like try for fun, but I definitely don't think chapters from Orson's POV would work.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, they would just be fluff and like,
Yeah.
like, how much do I love myself?
Right, exactly.
The dynamic between Ezra and Orson, there's a lot of contrast, but there's that kind of glorious kind of where they meld together. Can you kind of describe their, because I think am I the only one that's finished the book? Or, oh, you got lucky.
I'm a partner, I'm very lucky.
So could you talk more about their relationship and kind of how you built it and how it could be destroyed.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Going back to like the Tom Ripley, Dickie Greenleaf, and Nick Carraway, Jay Gatz kind of dichotomies. Those were definitely models for it. Where there's this kind of quiet, ultra infatuated observer, and there's this Adonis-like figure whom he's just putting on a pedestal. So that's, those dynamics really were what I drew from for that. And then in terms of how it can be destroyed, like, I feel like it's so easily destroyed. Well, it's both easily destroyed and it's easily repaired. And I won't give away necessarily what happens in that arena. But I think that what necessarily has to happen for Ezra to like mature and understand, that maybe Orson shouldn't be who he's falling in love with. I think he has to experience some reciprocation from Orson. When Orson might, if Orson were to reciprocate his affections, Ezra might realize, it might be turned off, might realize like, oh my God, this isn't right, which is messed up. That shouldn't be the case. Like, it should be like, oh wow, great, like this guy, loves me back, But I think that Orson's reciprocation necessarily, oh, there's a very cute cat, would necessarily take the form of some kind of manipulation, and Ezra might see through that. As long as Orson is aloof, as long as he's distant, then Ezra can be in love with him. That said, I do think Orson has legitimate love for Ezra. I think Orson has love for Ezra, and I think Orson feels for Ezra. I just think Orson won't let himself inhabit that point of view.
And definitely like in the closet issues.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he's pansexual. And people seem to think he's straight, and I'm like, how he's having sex with
No.
man.
yeah.
Like, I'm
Like,
New York Times.
He's definitely at least bi. Like that's very clear.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You talked about the 3 act structure, so I'm curious if there are any plans or hopes of a movie, and if so, who would you want to star as, especially Ezra?
Oh man. So I will keep the movie information or the TV information under wraps for now. But because we're still sussing things out in that department. But I had this period where I really intensely wanted Rami Malek to be Ezra. And I was like really like keyed into that idea. But I think he's aged out of that role. I think he's a little old for that role. And I don't know. Like I was thinking, because I actually spoke to someone who was interested in making it into a TV show who was like, Harry Styles should be Orson. And at first I was like, I don't know. And then now I'm like, oh my God, yes. Like, love that. Like, can you see it?
I don't know.
It grows on you.
I saw The Last Policeman, or My Policeman.
Say that again.
Is My Policeman?
Yeah, no, I heard about that. I haven't seen it. It's good.
Of course I've seen it, but yeah.
It's very steamy.
Oh.
He does a very good. I don't think he has enough like. Yeah, okay, maybe I can see it.
It's like a white Jesus vibe.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a white Jesus?
I kind of pictured Orson a little bit like beefier though. Like, just like a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Like,
Like chiseled.
a little like taller and
Yeah.
like a little bit like bigger biceps. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because I could see Harry almost playing Ezra and like in a weird, like they would have to like kind of shrink him, but yeah.
I know I could. He can really be either of the two in some sense, but yeah. No, I agree. I see Orson as beefier for sure, and there's I don't know, Robert Pattinson crossed my mind
Ooh,
too.
yeah.
That feels more right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a process.
Any of them would be great. Like
Yes, totally.
what time is it? Do we need to go to audience questions?
7:44.
Yeah, let's ask some questions from the audience, and I will check and see if there are any questions from you virtual audience.
Okay, so you were talking about how your plot structure is very like kind of point A to B, but then you have that prologue there. So did you write the prologue after the fact? You did.
I did,
That's why I
yeah.
was wondering if it was like in there all along, or if you were like, oh, no, I think I'm gonna add that.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think I'm gonna add that kind of situation. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
What was the hardest part in writing the book?
Oh, yeah, you know, it was, it actually was the plot structure, nailing that down. Even though, because it is, Shane's right, like it is very character heavy and very plot heavy, but it was sort of like understanding how to, I knew point A and I knew point B. And it was just the getting there. But like I said, it's so much more tightly plotted than my other book. And that was so deliberate because I wanted this to be more accessible than my other book. Like really wanted that. So yeah, it was, I think that kind of process of figuring it out was probably the hardest. Yeah.
Sar in the virtual studio
Yeah.
also asked the same question, what was difficult? But also saying, were there any parts where you had the most fun writing?
Yes, I had so much fun writing the synthesis stuff. Like Orson like recruiting celebrities, sort of Scientology style, to like become synthesized and wear this like, you know, magnetic hat console thing called the Bliss Mini, and like just, you know, be really blissed out and excited about it. It's so much fun writing that, like Silicon Valley stuff and that lifestyle stuff and that goop stuff. I just love it all.
Yes.
Yeah, there's definitely group in there. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun writing that. I had a lot of fun writing Ermau. Ermau was really fun, the South American dictatorship. That was a lot of fun to write because I got to invent a language. Like not nowhere near as detailed as Tolkien, but like there's some lines in there. So yeah, those are probably my two favorite parts. Yeah.
I really love this idea you have of like somebody who's in love with somebody who like society considers like way too good for them, and like is this like Adonis, meanwhile they're like short and look kind of funny, which is pretty relatable to me. What kind of things did you tap into when you were writing that? Because that's like a very relatable feeling. But
Yeah, it was definitely like, you know, in a large part my own experience, but also in part the experience of people I've been close to, you know, because I guess, well, I do have friends who are Adonises. I'm thinking of a couple who are just like, wow, you're just like really good looking and things come easily to you. But I exist on the margins, and I'm associated with people who exist on the margins. And it's not so much like, oh, what you look like, right? Like you're funny looking, you're not funny looking, you're like, it's not about appearances so much as about like where you reside in the world. And Ezra is very much someone who resides on the margins. And so when I was writing that, it was coming from my own experience, you know. And like in my youth, that's where I was the whole time, in high school and younger. So yeah, I think that's where I pulled from the most.
I think I've dated several Ezras. Like, that's definitely where I lean. You brought up, or something flashed in my head. You've invented so many things and so many different people and so many people that are vaguely like, oh, I wonder if that's based on this person. But then you also do have some very like, this is an actual person, this is an actual thing. So I'm wondering where you drew the line with, okay, this has to be invented, but this reference needs to be real.
Yeah, because it is kind of ripped from the headlines in a lot of ways. Like it's Theranos, it's Nexium, it's like all these things very transparently. But I would say the South American dictatorship had to be its own thing. Like it couldn't just be like, we're going to like Argentina in the 70s or something. Like it had to be like its own microcosm. It was, I think it was that, and it was also, can't think of, well, I mean, like, the idea of New Life is its own thing. Like, it draws all these different influences, like I said, like the Theranos and the Nexium, but like, it's its own entity. And that I had to have just be separate from everything else. Like, I had to just like invent that fake technology, you know? I couldn't like dip into like an actual startup's actual technology. So yeah, that's where I would say I drew the line.
You mentioned your editor wanting a little bit more sex. And I'm wondering if your editor or any of your other first readers wanted something or wanted less of, wanted more of, whatever, and you were just like, no. It's perfect how it is.
I'm trying to think what people wanted. There was, I think people wanted more small cons, like more like of the Amy Donahue, like the wine mom stuff and the cryptocurrency stuff. I think people wanted more smaller scams. And I was like, this is the perfect amount of small scams.
Yeah.
Like, it would feel like it would go on way too long if it was like yet another small scam.
Well, if you had to describe Bitcoin in any more detail,
I know.
I'm so lost.
I know.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's an easy scam. I don't know how it works.
I know, I kind of made it up myself.
But no, I agree. I think that you should not have put more in. Like, it helps build everything, but then quickly propel it into clearly where you want it to be.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The question you asked, but was there anything that you did put in? Not, you didn't say no to people, but you said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Does anybody have that kind of sway over you?
No. I'm a loose cannon. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think so. People did want to see more Elaine. If people don't know, Elaine is this kind of like middle-aged person in the C-suite who gets in on the New Life con. And I think people wanted to see more Elaine just because she's so flat-footed, she's so matter-of-fact, and she's just one of these like have you seen Euphoria, anyone at all? People seen Euphoria, the latest season where there's this like former school teacher who's this drug lord, and she's just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, but I can't give you this $500,000 suitcase of heroin, you know. She's so great. And that's kind of Elaine, where Elaine is very matter of fact, innocent in some ways, not in others. And people were just like, we love Elaine, we want more. And I was like, I also love Elaine. Like, yeah, so that's probably what I put more of.
She could have her own book.
I would love to write that book.
Like just like a little spin-off novella. Her own whole episode just featuring Elaine. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the deli scene was really well written. Really, I think that's actually
Deli
where I
scene,
fell
yeah.
in love with Elaine. Like,
Yeah.
because before that she was kind of like, oh, she's gonna be a throwaway character,
Right.
and then the deli scene
Yeah.
like really cemented like
Yeah.
her whole character and her whole like reason for being there. Like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's where I think because she is someone who reciprocates Ezra's love. It's obviously a platonic relationship, but like they are very close. She becomes one of his very few friends. And that deli scene is definitely one of those pivotal moments where like they're starting to like fall in love, quote unquote.
Yeah, I don't think it was until close to the end that I didn't realize that Ezra just really doesn't have many friends.
Yeah, no, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted Ezra to have friends.
I
but
did too.
Ezra makes some
Wasn't in the cards.
Ezra makes some friends in prison though. So.
Yes, he makes so many friends in prison. He has a lot of fun, which is messed up. No one, that's not an accurate picture of prison. But like, he does enjoy himself because people are pulling strings for him.
Mhm.
Like he's kind of like king of the place. So.
All right. Shall we move into the sign? Yes, more questions.
Yes.
So you touched on relating to Ezra in ways I think that many of us can probably echo in our own lives. I'm wondering if you relate to Orson or if you aspire to some things about Orson's character in your own life.
Yeah, no, I definitely aspire to his confidence. I think I love like the fact that Orson is both, like Orson is such an ideas guy, but he does follow through, like he'll have a big idea and a lot of times Ezra has to execute it, but sometimes when Ezra doesn't, Orson like really like comes through, and I think it's Orson's ability to like believe in himself and believe in his own ideas that he's able to manifest stuff for himself in that way. And that's something that I just want to have in my life too. And I want to have that the self-love, not the narcissistic self-love that Orson has, but a kind of affirming self-love. Yeah, good question.
Should we love con men as much as we do in your book?
I know. I mean, because I want to, because I've seen all those old movies like Paper Moon and The Sting and stuff, and they're just so great. But then I think like I could love con men, but they'd rob me blind. They don't care about me, But writing con men who are lovable is definitely such a fun thing to do.
Any other questions?
Was there a character of yours that was more difficult to write because you didn't feel a connection to them?
Yeah, definitely the Elon Musk character. There's an Elon Musk character. Oh God, I just forgot his last name.
That's fair.
Do you remember his last name? It's like Dexter something. Elhorn.
There.
Dexter Elhorn is
No,
the-
I get quizzed.
Cast with flying colors. We both got there together. Yeah, Dexter Elhorn was harder to write just because I was like, I know this guy is going to be like a awful dude bro, right? But in what capacity? Like, what will he do exactly? So I came up with like, oh, he's obsessed with drones and surveillance, and he gives drones to kids, So that was like that's kind of where I went.
Let's have another giant round of applause. Celebrate this fantastic book. So we do have copies available for sale at the desk, right over there. And think about your friends who will absolutely love this book as much as I did. And we will do the same right up here. Oh, and thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Oh my goodness.
She ran the